There we go. Okay, wonderful. Welcome. Welcome to this micro session on getting all the voices in the Zoom room. And thanks for choosing to be here. So I'll just wait for just about 10 seconds, see if anybody else will be joining us. I see there's a few people who are joining on audio. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this this micro session. Okay, great. Well, let's jump right in. Let's get to know who is in our Zoom room. And I'd like to invite everyone to share in the chat your name, where you're calling in from, one place in your life where you're experiencing community right now. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the chat. Hi, everyone. If you're just joining, welcome to the micro session on getting all the voices in the Zoom room. And I'd love to invite you to share in the chat, your name, where you're calling in from, and one place in your life right now where you're experiencing community. And I am hoping that we'll be able to, yes, I think we can see everybody's response from this room. Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, so here we go. Thanks, Carolyn, for launching us in. Carol from Southern Germany, a place of community is the balcony of my grandparents' house. Beautiful. Lillian, hi, Lillian. From Nairobi, currently an online community for community builders. Yes, thank you. Mena. Hi, from Cairo, but living in Berlin. I work at NIDISI, a nonprofit organization, experience community as I work for communications at the organization. Wonderful. Great. So just in the chat, we're just introducing ourselves. Darren from Taipei, welcome. Online community of ULab Global, fantastic. Abdel Rahman Hassan calling from Cairo, welcome. Experiencing community through an arts class I joined recently, fantastic. And Laura from Germany, experienced community in an online WeSpace practice group, fantastic. Shayamoli calling from Thane, India. I work at Scrap, a social sustainability enterprise. I'm experiencing an online community between fellow pet parents. Fantastic, wonderful. Okay, so there's so many people on this call calling from all corners of this earth. That's what I love about online work and experiencing community in so many different ways. And this is kind of the basis of a lot of the work that we do with networks is building the communities. So Oliver from Ghana, hi Oliver, part of Sun City Hub Entrepreneurship Community, fantastic. Great. And so I'm Gwen, I'm from Barcelona, Spain. And one of the places that I experience community is with my local tennis team right now. So I've been very excited about that. Let's turn our cameras on if that's possible for you. And let's turn our mics on and say hello to this wonderful group of people who have gathered from all over the world for this session. So our mics on, our cameras on, if it's possible for you, and let's just say a big hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. Fantastic. It's wonderful.
Everyone.
Hi. So it's wonderful to see you, and it's wonderful to hear you. And so we can put ourselves back on mute. We'll be unmuting ourselves at various times during this call. I am Gwyn Wansbrough. I'm a facilitator. I'm an experienced designer, and I lead an online course called Breakthrough Facilitation. I've worked in the field of facilitation for over 15 years, and I recently stepped down from leading a global facilitation training organization called Partners for Youth Empowerment. One of the most important and challenging aspects of our work was to get all the voices from our vast and diverse network heard. That was youth and partner organizations, people from different backgrounds, life experiences, cultural traditions, languages. Has anyone here faced those kinds of challenges in their networks? I'm imagining that, yes, as network leaders, these are some of the most crucial challenges that we face. So 2 years ago, I switched to online facilitation. Did anyone else here switch from all that in-person work to all of a sudden having to do work online? Yeah, a few people. Great. And I remember when I switched, I remember using the chat for the very first time, just as we used it at the start of this session. And I had a real aha moment. It was like online gave us new tools to get all the voices in the room that we didn't even have before in person. So for the past 2 years, I've immersed myself in learning all about virtual facilitation. I write about it. I lead a course on it. And my wonderful course manager is here with us, Lillian. And I'll put my contact information in the chat. I love connecting with anyone who is interested and curious about facilitation. So as people who lead networks, we have a lot of experience in this room. I know about getting voices heard in the room. And I can't wait to explore this with all of you right now. So for today's session, we've just got one aim, and that is to learn some practical techniques to get all of the voices in your Zoom room. And I've got one agreement that I'd like to propose to this group, and it is to participate fully. And that will look different for every single person in this room. But when you participate, you'll learn more from the other participants in this room. And when other people participate and share their experiences, they'll also learn more from you. Okay, so we want to hear from everyone today. If you agree, can you give me either a Zoom reaction, a little wave, or just a little something in the chat? Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you. I can see all of you on the screen. And if it's not possible to turn your video on, please know that you always have the chat, and we'll be checking that throughout the session. Okay, so we're going to do some interactive activities, then we'll lift the curtain, we'll reflect on what we've learned, we'll have time for some questions and discussions, and then we'll close and we'll go back to the main room. Okay, and you'll have opportunities to contribute in the big group. And we always have the chat at any time to share our thoughts and our ideas. Okay, so this is officially the shortest session I have ever led that's been interactive, 25 minutes. I've done 30 minutes before, but 25 minutes, we're gonna see what happens. Okay, and so if all of that makes sense, we're just gonna jump right in. And we're gonna start with a little finger poll to get a better sense of your comfort in getting all of the voices of your group members in your Zoom room or whatever digital platform you use. If you don't lead virtual groups, that's totally fine as well. Just think about your in-person groups or any kind of group experience that you've been part of, and there's no right or wrong answer. Okay, so a finger poll is simply showing on your hand. And if you're audio only, you can put your number in the chat. 0 is your fist, 5 are all 5 fingers. What is your comfort level in getting all the voices in your room? 0 would be, I'm completely uncomfortable in getting people's voices in the room. I just am. And 5 would be, I could teach a masterclass on getting people's voices in the room. Okay, so from 0 to 5, okay, so great. We've got some 3s and some 2s, and we've got a 4 in the chat. We've got a 2. Wonderful. So we've got a real range of numbers. And don't worry, you're not going to have to justify your number to anyone. But let's dive a bit deeper and talk about your biggest struggles in getting your voices heard. Okay, so we're going to just jump off from the results of the finger poll, and I'm going to invite people by their numbers just to share and answer. You can share it in the big group. I would love to hear some responses in the big group, and you can always use also the chat, okay? So if you want to share in the big group, please raise your hand by just putting the Zoom, the reaction button up so I can see you, okay? So if somebody has already said what you are going to say before, just give a little thumbs up reaction, okay? And we're going to try to keep our responses to approximately 1 minute because we want to hear from as many people as possible. All right, so let's hear from some of the I know we don't actually have any zeros. I don't think we have any ones. Let's hear from some of the twos out there, okay? What are some of the biggest struggles in getting all voices heard? Would anyone like to share with us? Great, okay. Shamoli, am I pronouncing that right?
It's a funny pronunciation. It's actually Shamli, but that's
Shamoli,
okay.
Shamoli. Okay, thank you for that. Great.
So I'm actually very new at facilitation. So so far, my biggest struggle has been that I cannot see faces a lot of times because I do present to corporates and usually within work hours. So while a lot of them are keen to listen, they don't have videos on, which the lack of interaction is a little demotivating. And so that for me, as of now, has been the biggest struggle.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Absolutely. Okay, great. And I saw some other reactions there, and I think some of them have just disappeared off of the screen. Sorry, if you did put your hand up already, could you put your hand up again? Okay. Carol.
Oh, actually, it was just to underline, to show that I had the same experience.
You are following exactly the instructions that I gave you. Thank you. And I saw some other thumbs up as well. Laura, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I can share. I did indicate with a 3, but one of the challenges that I'm experiencing with online facilitation and engagement is that, and it's a tension, and sometimes I feel I can balance it quite well and sometimes not, around having space to hear everybody and connect, and then getting whatever done that needs to get done. Whatever outcome, goal, project, usually people don't just connect for fun. I think in many networks it's part of it, but it's also doing something together and finding that balance, especially in online spaces where you don't have maybe like an informal break time or taking a walk after a stressful meeting or whatever, that falls away. So finding that balance, we still do or get done whatever is needed, but there's also space for everybody.
Yeah,
is a challenge.
Great, wonderful. Thanks for sharing that challenge as well. So let's hear from some of the fours, or the threes or the fours. What are some of the signs that you see when you may not be getting all the voices heard? How does that show up in your Zoom sessions, in your online sessions?
Can I go?
Yeah, Janira, great.
So I sometimes, we have groups with like 20 people, and a few people will be very vocal and others seem to sort of sit back, and sometimes they're looking down. I'm wondering if they're scrolling social media on their phones. It's like, I don't know, often, or they might just be looking down to think. It's hard to know if people are engaged or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And the challenge in the virtual facilitation is that you just don't have the social cues and some of the body language that you have in person. So it makes it even more challenging. And so, Mena, did you have your hand raised? Great. Would you like to contribute?
Yeah, just like following up like on the signs where I know like people are not fully engaged, in addition to like not like switching on the cameras, for instance, for most of the time, or yeah, like feeling they're not like really concentrating. I feel like sometimes also when like, you know, there is a question asked that needs discussion, for instance, like I feel like there are like just certain people who are engaged, not everyone. So, and like when you just try to ask the other people like who are not very engaged to maybe participate, they would feel like, you know, that we just agree with whatever you're saying, you know, so they didn't really have a say. So that's one of the things that make me feel like, okay, you don't feel like very engaged, and I don't know, to be honest, how to tackle that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, there's lots of that is a very common kind of dynamic, especially in the online, you know, on the online sessions. Really kind of like different levels of engagement. Maybe you have a few people who might be very engaged, and it's hard to get a sense of how engaged the rest of the group really is. Great. And so one more question, and then we're going to lift the curtain. What are some of your favorite techniques for getting voices heard? What are some of the techniques that you have used that kind of have worked for your groups in getting all of the voices in the room? If you have some. Anyone have a technique that they use? Menna, I see you, and I just want to see if there's anyone else who hasn't contributed in the big group already. Okay, Abdul Rahman.
Yeah.
Oh, Darren.
Yes.
Okay, hi, Darren. Yes.
I think I will start with some questions. You know, some kind of question to ask people, and then to see if any people that have kind of some, you know, share the experience, so that when you create that moment, it's easier for people to start the dialogue. Yeah, so that would be my technique. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you for that one. Abdul Rahman.
Yeah, I say very similar to Darren as well, just sharing experience, but I was also going to say maybe aligning like what we hear to people's experiences. So say, oh, we heard the X and Y. I know this person is very, you know, interested in this topic. How do they feel about it? And then the second approach, which is, I think it's quite aggressive, but just calling people out can also be quite helpful. But yeah, it depends on the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nice. Okay, I'm going to keep going because I'm looking at the clock and it's 5. We're just got about 5 minutes to go. Caro and anybody else who wanted to contribute to that, let's go into the next part, which is let's lift the curtain on what we have done so far in the session to see what those facilitation techniques that we used in this session, because the session, whether we kind of have realized it or not, the whole session I designed with this intention of showing and giving you the experience of getting your voices heard in this session to see what we can learn. So let's lift the curtain and see what facilitation techniques did I use, what did I do or I say to get all the voices in the room, and think about from when you first entered the session to just our discussion right now. And we can use the chat as well. What techniques, let's try to identify as many as possible. Okay, and if anybody would like to contribute in the big group as well. Okay, great. Yes, Janira, ask everyone to introduce themselves in the chat and the finger poll using the reaction tool. Absolutely. Okay, Carol, as we see the responses in the chat coming up, let's also hear from you.
Yeah, I also wanted to point out that the check-in question, and also like you moderating and having a good overview on who already has spoken and who has not.
Yeah, tracking. Tracking is a big part of what you're doing as a facilitator. Who has actually spoken? Lillian, I see your hand up, and then Laura.
Well, a quick one is saying hello to the group. I found that helped us all just come into the room really nicely.
Great. Yeah, greeting people as they arrive and using their names. Absolutely. Thanks, Lillian. Laura.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to something which I feel was a bit like invisible behind, but throughout the entire session, I felt you're really here present with your own energy and enthusiasm, and you actually care about what you're speaking and about everybody here in this space. And this is something where I feel this is a social cue we can also pick up online. And I think we all have some system in our bodies where we notice that. And if people are disinterested or distracted themselves, it doesn't open up the space in the same way for everybody else to show up. So to me, that's like it's maybe like one of the facilitation superpowers or something that beyond techniques, which I think are great, makes such a big difference of how we show up, and then through that just invite others to show up in a similar way.
Great. That is really, really beautifully expressed. And it certainly is a facilitation superpower. This whole idea of like being present, in with your group. And it's something that, one of the things that I try to do is I try to connect with my own passion for whatever it is I'm going to be, leading or teaching or doing with my groups before my session. And I have seen that really helps, people kind of connect and builds trust and safety. Okay. And great. And Laura, I also see that you put in clear orientation and group agreements for active engagement. Mena, thanks for that, setting the expectation and the goals from the very beginning. We can't assume ever with our groups that we share the same, we automatically share the same aims and goals. And so I find it, even for a very short session, like 25 minutes, I will always name the goal of the aim of our agreement. Of our session. It always helps to get people aligned and understand, why are we here? And then an agreement, sometimes when you want people to engage and participate, you actually have to ask. You can't just assume that people will automatically participate. I found that asking outright, let's participate today, and sharing why. We're just about to run out of time, but I wanted to share with you some of the facilitation techniques that we have used in the chat. And if there's one thing that I want you to, actually just one thing that I want you to take away from this session, it's the 3 G's. So the 3 G's are: get voices heard early, give people options, and guide the process. You are the facilitators and you are guiding the process. So thanks so much, everyone. And we are just on time. And we've got, okay. So thanks so much. Let's turn on our mics one last time before we go up back to the main group, and just say goodbye to this wonderful small breakout group.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye.
We'll see you in the big group.
We have 5 more minutes, actually.
Oh, we've added 5 more minutes. Oh, great. Okay. Cancel, close breakout group. Okay, fantastic. So I'll just open up these last 5 minutes for any question and discussion. Mena.
All right, I just have a question. Maybe it's kind of relevant, but basically I would like to get some of your tips on if I'm facilitating or representing, an organization in a virtual fair or like a virtual exhibition. So what are your tips to make sure I have good engagement with the with the audience, and to be also relevant to the topic I'm talking about, but to be also in a somehow like fun way, like engaging way. So I would like to know your tips in that regard. Thank you.
Great. Well, great question. And absolutely, there's so many ways that you can bring in that kind of like interact, even if you're doing a presentation where you can't do breakout groups, you can't have people turning on their mics and all that kind of stuff. What I like to do is think about, my audience and think about it as a conversation, even if I can't, hear their voices, have them really present. So when I am, and I think this is what one of the participants in this group already alluded to, was to make the material relevant to your audience. So you're presenting something and you can kind of put out those questions to people, like, these are some of the things, these are some of the challenges, these are some of the things that we see happening out there in the world. Does anyone else see that? And even if, you can't have the person respond back, or you can always use the chat. The chat is a wonderful tool, even if you can't use the chat, as if it's kind of like a conversation, asking questions, prompting people to reflect, sharing some of your own experience. I find that, as a facilitator, as a presenter, to share my own struggles, how I overcame my struggles to a group who I'm working with, also helps people to connect with you. So those would be a few techniques that I would offer up. I hope that's useful. Any other questions? Okay, Caro and then Laura.
I've experienced some facilitation situations where people are just not used to participate, like be it because they are in a certain kind of education system or in a kind of work culture that is very old school, I would say. So how do you keep your motivation as a facilitator to engage? Great question. And there's a couple of things that I think about as a facilitator when I work with groups. I'm lucky because most of the time I work with groups who want to learn about facilitation. They're kind of eager to be in the session. But I have also worked with groups who, it's maybe more of a serious kind of more business focused group, or even like people who have not chosen to be in your session. They've been sent by their organizations. So in that case, I would always, from the very beginning, in some very low risk and very easy way, start to invite engagement from people. So it might even be just, I like to do the prompt questions, like your name, where you're calling in from, and then one more question that's easy to answer, that everyone would have an answer to, that just discloses a little bit more. So, and the trick with all of this facilitation is that you really have to know what is your purpose and who is your audience. So if your purpose really is, we've got to make a decision on this project in the next 45 minutes as a group, you're probably not going to have a lot of time to do a lot of community building and warm-ups and icebreakers and all this kind of stuff. You'd want to get to your aim and your purpose as quickly as possible, but and your audience. So if you know that you have an audience, like I have had audiences that want to go way further with all the facilitation stuff than I had even anticipated. So I have to kind of adjust to that. If I have an audience who's really, reserved in that sense, then I just want to see what I can introduce, just a little sprinkling of some of the facilitation that brings that barrier to participation way down, and just gives people just an opportunity to interact. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you. Yes, thanks.
Great. Okay, Laura, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah. Well, I loved how you said like facilitation is like really guiding people. I got this image of like taking a group by the hand and guiding. And the question that I have is around participation and engagement. I have the sense that different personality types or cultural things, you know, make people behave in different ways. So I'm just wondering how you kind of counteract that so it becomes more inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think acknowledging the diversity in your group. And so, for example, when we talked about participation, I said like participation might look different to every person, and that's not only, you know, cultural, but it is sometimes cultural, where you might be in a meeting where there are hierarchies because of age, because of different factors that, you know, are kind of like embedded in a certain cultural context. So really acknowledging that diversity and trying to kind of give space for it. And I think we're going to close, and we'll see you back in the